Junior year of high school, my parents got a job offer out of state, and so I was forced to move all across the country. I started a new school late into the academic year, mid-March, and had a hard time fitting into the new school. All I wanted was to make a friend, but was too shy to talk to anyone. It was around this time that my friends left MySpace to join Facebook, so I did the same to keep close to them. Some days later, I received a friend request from David. David was a guy that I had been friends with in my old town. Well, he wasn't exactly my friend, but rather the friend of another friend. My friend Jerry had introduced him to the group and would bring him along every time all of us hung out. We knew that David was a year older than us and that he had gone to a different school. But other than that, we didn't really know anything about him. In fact, we kinda always just referred to him as Jerry's friend because he never even bothered to talk to any of us. So, when I received a friend request from him on Facebook, I was more than confused. He had hardly spoken to me when I lived near him so far. So for him to want to be friends with me after all this time just seemed a little strange. But I was so lonely and desperate for friends that I didn't care. Other than that, nothing really seemed off about him. At least not at the time. Looking back, I do remember that he hardly had any pictures/friends when I first accepted his friend request. But like I said, this was around the time that people had just started using Facebook, so it didn't seem all that weird for him to have such a barren profile. And over the years, his friend list did get a lot bigger, even more so than mine, so I didn't really think anything of it. But anyway, I digress. I accepted his friend request, and it was just like this that David and I became friends. He told me that he just started university and that he was lonely because he was too shy to make friends. I told him that I was having a hard time in my new school for the same reasons, and we bonded over that. Little by little, we started talking more. He shared his problems with me and I shared mine. And when it was time for me to apply to university, he even helped me. He even helped me out. He taught me how to sign up for my SATs and my ACTs, helped me apply to scholarships, and even paid for one of my application fees, using a Visa gift card, of course, so I didn't receive any of his personal information. And he didn't receive any of mine. Then, when I finally started university, he helped with that as well. He told me where to buy books, gave me study tips, provided emotional support. So, when he asked for my phone number, I didn't even hesitate to give it to him. David was my best friend, and I wanted to keep him close, even if we were physically away from each other. It was around this time that David started sharing more of his life with me, and all of it was pretty normal stuff. He had a job at Pizza Hut, which he hated but needed to keep in order to pay for the bills. He also played soccer, but not for university or anything. It was just a group of guys that got together on the weekends to unwind. I think the biggest thing he told me was that he had flunked out of university, and that I was the only one that knew because he was too embarrassed to tell anyone else. And at one point, he also had to move back in with his mom, which he hated a lot. 2, maybe 3 years into our friendship, my family decides to take a trip back to the city, where we had lived prior to moving all across the country, and I excitedly tell him and all my high school friends. Most of them were pretty excited about the idea of all of us hanging out again. Because after high school, we all just gone our separate ways. But when I contacted David about it, he showed little interest in hanging out with us. I thought that was weird. I wasn't some stranger he had met online, but rather someone who had been in his life for many years. I kept insisting and asking for a reason, and then he finally gave me one. He told me that his pictures had been heavily edited and that he was afraid of disappointing me if we met in real life. I told him it didn't matter, like what he looked like, and I told him that it didn't matter what he looked like and that I just wanted to meet him. But he still didn't want to hang out. Instead, he just started being a huge dick to me. He knew exactly what buttons to push, knew all of my insecurities and secrets, and had started using all that knowledge to hurt me. So I just stopped talking to him. Some weeks later, I meet my friends as planned, and much to my surprise, I see David there, looking just like he did on his pictures. I didn't understand why David was there. I didn't even understand why he had lied about photoshopping his pictures, or why he had said he didn't want to meet me only for him to show up at our friend's house. But I was so angry at him that I didn't ask any questions. I just kept waiting for an apology, but David wouldn't approach me. He was treating me like he treated me back when we were in high school. I was really upset, but given that he had been such a huge dick to me, I just figured that this was just another attempt at getting under my skin. We were all drinking and talking about what we were up to, and when it was his time to share, he pretty much said the same things I already knew about him. He said that he wished he was still in university like the rest of us, but that he had flunked out and he was just living with his mom. Said that he was miserable there and he wanted to move out, but that his job at Pizza Hut wasn't paying him enough for him to move out on his own. At this point, though, I was already pretty pissed off, and the alcohol had given me enough courage to finally ask him why he had been ignoring me. He apologized, but admitted that he hardly remembered me, which hurt my feelings, but also pissed me off even more. I told him about Facebook and about our text messages, and he just kept insisting that he didn't use Facebook. Apparently, he had used MySpace at one point, but had stopped using that when he had switched over to Tumblr. A Facebook account was something that he hadn't even considered making. I asked him about the text messages, and he just said that I probably confused him with another David, because he never had my number. I thought that denying it was a lousy excuse, but Jerry backed him, which pissed me off even more. The thing, though, was that David hadn't just been talking to me on Facebook, but also to a bunch of us. So when we kept calling him out on his shit, he just told us to text this David guy to prove it wasn't him. He set his phone on the table and I texted him, but no new messages appeared on his phone. Then, while we're all arguing about how we need to give it some time, the David that I had been talking to for years responds, proving that we had been talking to a fake all along. Things turned pretty awkward at this point, with all of us feeling angry and betrayed, and David obviously feeling extremely violated. So, with all of us wanting answers, we opened up our friend's laptop in search for David's profile on Facebook. The first thing that David points out is that whoever this was, they were using his mother's maiden name and not his real last name. And that while most of the people on his friends list were people that he knew in real life, none of them were people that he had kept in contact with. His display picture was also of a dog which he had owned years ago, but had since died. Just like the fake David had told me. All measures that, looking back, I'm guessing were used by this person to keep David's close friends from actually finding him on Facebook. The older pictures on Facebook had been taken from his MySpace back when he had still been using it. But most of the newer ones had been taken from his Tumblr, which he apparently uploaded pretty often. The weirdest thing was there were some pictures he swore he had never seen before. These were all pictures of his soccer games taken from the audience, which the fake David had said his brother had taken. The real David said his brother never went to his games, neither did any of his family members or friends. Further exploring his own fake profile, David pointed out that while a bunch of status updates were of things that had never happened, a lot of them were accurate. Whoever this person was, they had been watching David for a long time. They knew his schedule, knew what movies he went, knew what ice cream flavors he liked, knew his favorite bands, just knew practically everything about him. We did confront the fake David, but he never answered the text messages and instead deleted the profile before we had the chance to examine it further. So we never did get any answers. I don't know why that person pretended to be David for so long or why they even did it in the first place. All I know is I felt extremely violated for having shared so many private details of my life with him. And of course, I also felt a great deal of pity for the real David. I wondered for the longest time how this person found him and how they managed to learn so many private details of his life. Then a few months back, my mother calls saying that she found a profile with her name, but my picture's on it. My middle name is my mom's first name, something that very few people know. She thought I had made the second profile, and I didn't tell her the truth because I didn't want to scare her. But truth was that I didn't even know that profile existed. I've always kept Facebook set to private, and I no longer accept random friend requests, nor do I post my pictures anywhere else. So this profile only had really old pictures of me, and nothing weird like David's soccer game pictures, but it was still active, and had been active for a while. None of the friends were people that I know, and none of the updates were of the things that I've been doing in real life. So I don't know the profile belonged to the same person that stalked David, but I'm extremely average looking, so I don't know why anyone would want to use my pictures when there are way prettier girls online. So I'm guessing it had to have been him. I don't know. I just reported the profile and it no longer exists. But I wonder if this person is still pretending to be me, or if they've moved on to somebody else.